Do you feel overwhelmed by Instagram? Do you feel overwhelmed by how many accounts there are and how much content people are putting out? Does it make you feel like you need to do the same? Does it make you feel like, I don't know what to talk about? I just don't even know where to begin. Do you feel overwhelmed by all the things that you could possibly share but are not sure where to start? Or you were wondering why in the world do I even need a personal brand? If you're anything like me, you've at some point asked these questions. And today we're going to answer exactly that. Why do you need a personal brand as a scientist, engineer, or technologist? Or why do you need a personal brand in 2020, period? So let's talk to Cheryl to learn more about why personal branding is important and how you can get started. Hi there, this is Prasha Dutra, and I'm passionate about helping you unlock your true potential in your science, technology, engineering, and mathematics career and beyond. Less than a decade ago, I moved to the US from India to live my American dream. I took my engineering career to the next level by starting my own consulting and coaching company while thriving at my 9-to-5 job. Money, time management, career planning, and personal growth are all things we'll discuss here. From expert guests and their stories to my own lessons, this show is an ongoing masterclass in how to believe in your brilliance and conquer your STEM career with confidence. Get a pen and paper and get ready for an education you wish you had in school. This is Her STEM Story, the podcast. Our guest today is Cheryl Lau. She's an aspiring researcher in social welfare and an incoming PhD student based in Hong Kong. She is an online personal branding strategist who helps early stage researchers and professionals develop an effective branding strategy so they can show up confidently on social media, create value-packed content, and make an impact both on and offline. Her journey is amazing, and how she has come so far. We're going to talk all about that, and you'll walk away with some amazing tips to make your content on point, on brand, and learn why you need a personal branding strategy and why you need a personal brand. So let's get started. Hi, Cheryl. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Prasha. Thank you so much for having me here. This is so exciting.
I know. I'm so excited to connect with you on Instagram and see your work every single day. You inspire us through your stories, through your content, and just you bring so much value that I had to have you on the show. So I'm so excited that you accepted and you're here.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I was really excited when we connected because I knew of your podcast even before we connected. So this is pretty cool for me too.
That's awesome. So I love that. So before we jump right into everything that you do, which is helping people and scientists mostly build a personal brand, but build their online businesses and all the different things through your channels and your coaching. Before we do that, I really want to know, how are you doing with everything going on with COVID-19? And you are far, far away in Hong Kong, right?
Yes, I am currently based in Hong Kong. Everything is, it's a change that we're all adjusting to, but it's been a while now, so I feel like I have adjusted to the work from home life. Just, trying to prioritize well-being while working from home, running my online business, and showing up on social media, really taking care of the mental and physical health.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think a lot of people have been, I'm sure you get this question too, but I do get this question a lot, is that how are you staying positive and how are you finding, all this positivity from? So what would be your answer to that?
When the situation first escalated, I must admit that I was pretty down just seeing the news. And that first week when the whole world kind of took a standstill, that was pretty rough for me. But then after that week, I realized, okay, this pandemic is going to be here for a while. So I might as well take care of myself and not let it get to me moving forward. So I actually started some habits. In March especially, I started journaling in the morning. It's just about a 5-10 minute exercise. I just write some things I'm grateful for, some affirmations, and some reframing of negative thoughts that I might be having at that moment. I started meditating for about 10 minutes a day, and I started exercising at home, which is very different for me.
Hmm. Yeah, I think exercising is so important. All those habits are so important. So tell us, what were your challenges learning these habits? Like, this is not easy to like sort of stick with it, right?
Yeah, I think because with this day and age of social media, we go online so much and we see people talk about COVID-19 every single day. I don't think there's been a day since March, especially, where I go on social media and not hear the word COVID at least once in some way, shape, or form. And that can be that can bring about, negative or sad feelings amongst people. So I think the hardest part for me was really being aware of how much I consume the news and how much social media I'm consuming at that time. And because we can get overwhelmed with so much information about COVID-19, or we can get just overwhelmed in general when we are on social media. So I think the hardest part was just limiting this consumption of social media and being online. I think one thing that I had to do was be very aware of how much time I'm spending each day and how much time per session each day.
Hmm. That's awesome. I think that's the thing. Like, I totally like resonate with it, because I was in the same boat. I was crying. I was like, oh my God, what's coming to an end? It's so hard. And when will I see my family? And oh my God, when will we travel again? And, I just limited my news like to zero almost at some point. Like, we're all set, and then focused again on like working out and, kind of doing some of those great habits that you just mentioned. So that is so important, like self-care. And that's why it's important to always have those in your toolkit. So I'm sure you are someone who works out. I'm sure you're someone who, reads more about habits and training yourself, so that when like crisis hit, like we have those tools already ready to go, right?
Yeah, and health is something that I only recently started prioritizing, and I'm so glad I did, because actually, in the past year or so, I've really taken care of my health. I was quite overweight in 2019 actually,
Mm-hmm.
and that took a toll. Just not taking care of myself, not exercising well, not eating well, that took a toll on my body and my mental well-being. So I guess I was a little more prepared than last year. The pandemic had hit last year, because was not taking care of myself at all last year.
Yeah, so different seasons of our life for sure.
For
So
sure.
so now tell us more about you. What do you do, and how do you help people also with their businesses that we just talked about a little bit in the beginning?
Yeah, so right now I am an early stage researcher based in Hong Kong. I work in a 9 to 5 as a research assistant in the social work department here at a university here in Hong Kong. And I'll actually be starting my PhD later on in the fall of 2020. And online, I am a personal branding strategist. So what I do is I help early stage researchers or professionals really gain the confidence to show up online and create value packed content in order to build either their personal brand and or online business, so that they can ultimately contribute to the field and make an impact both on and offline.
Mhm. That's awesome. So when you say you're a researcher, when you are working towards your PhD, so what got you interested in pursuing philosophy of doctorate? Right? Did I say it right?
Yeah. You know, I think it would trace back to my undergrad, because when we're born, we don't really think of research, but we were always told that we should become doctors, lawyers, and so on and so forth. But the word research never really occurred to me until undergrad. And so I studied at the University of Toronto, and I actually majored in psychology, but I actually did my senior thesis in biopsychology. So actually, for that project, I looked at the working memory processes of parvobumin and cholecystokinin interneurons in the medial prefrontal cortex. So that was my senior thesis.
Now
And
you have to explain it to a 5-year-old.
I
Let's
know,
go back it up.
it's been a while since I did that project.
Yeah.
But since undergrad, I was working as a research assistant at the undergraduate level in a few different disciplines. I tried out psychology, I tried out biopsychology, I tried out healthcare access research. I even tried out social work. So I did a few different disciplines. But my motivation for applying to PhD in the first place was I had this, I guess, goal or dream to help young people achieve optimal mental well-being through the development of culturally competent programs and services. And I was also interested in how social media and digital technologies, as well as how structural issues and societal inequalities can affect mental health. And to top it off, I also really like the research methods in social sciences. So that includes qualitative and quantitative, because that's something that I've been doing in my current job as a research assistant in Hong Kong. So I guess when I really sat down and took a look at, okay, so when I really sat down and thought about, is graduate school right for me? Is a PhD right for me? I thought about what are my end goals in life and career? And I realized that if I wanted to specialize in this area and wanted to really produce knowledge and use that knowledge and translate it into programs and services that can be applied in the real world, I think that I realized that a PhD in this field was the right fit for me.
So did you have some help while figuring this out? Did you have a mentor or anyone that helped you with the process?
I would say that my current employer, who is a professor in the university here in Hong Kong, he was a huge source of support, and he really walked me through the process of what it will look like if I was a PhD student. Even the postdocs and the other PhD students in my team, they were also a huge source of support and guidance when it came to not just the application process, but helping me visualize what life could look like if I'm in their shoes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's amazing. So, one of the questions that always comes up when people are figuring out their career paths is, oh, how do I know the right move? How do I know what's the next thing? And I feel like people put a lot of pressure on themselves to figure it out by themselves. That's why I asked that question, is that, okay, where can we go to get that support and to actually help someone else to tell us like that, oh, how do you do this? And how do you make this big decision of your life, right?
Yeah, for sure. And that's why we have people like you, Prasha, and you help
Yeah.
people basically figure out, because I know that you have programs right now that help people do exactly that, which is why it's so
Yeah.
exciting. And I totally agree that mentorship is so important. No, your mentor can come in so many different shapes and forms, but
Yeah.
and that's the beauty of it. You never know who your mentor could be, and mentorship has played definitely a huge role in my journey, especially in my career journey.
Yeah, I feel like, again, one of the things women struggle with is, what will people think about me? Who do I reach out to? I should already know this. Like, I should already know this is just killing us right now. It's like, no, you shouldn't. You've never done this before. Why should you know which PhD program to go to? Like, you have to ask people and you have to ask for that guidance. And, we are all here sort of helping people out in different ways. And as you said, mentorship can come in so many ways. I think traditional mentorship, from where I stand and where I see, I think traditional mentorship is sort of dying because there is not a lot of time for people to go give to each other. And, there is no structure to it. And there is nothing in it for both parties when it comes to like, why should they care? So unless this person is vested in you for a long time, if they're your professor, if they're your colleague, or like a family member, or who really really cares about you, it's very difficult to find these so-called mentors. And then people feel like, I should have a mentor, but I don't know who should it be. And then I was actually reading something on mentorship today, and they really just said that companies don't have structures, schools don't have structures for mentorship. And then when people ask mentors, they just say yes. They don't know what they're going to bring to the table. And then they waste each other's time for a very long time, because the mentee is thinking the mentor should know what to do. The mentor is thinking the mentee should know what to ask, and nobody's getting anything out of it. So I think coaching in this particular scenario, I feel like plays a really good role, because this is how it has helped me a lot, is that this person is really vested in you. Like, they're working for you. Yeah. Right? Like,
Yeah,
so
I
they're
really agree with
completely
that.
invested, and they are going to do, they're invested in your success. That's it. I think people should change that dialogue of, oh, they're so expensive or they cost so much money. this is what it'll take for you to step up, and this is what it'll take for this person to help you step up. So I think we took a little detour there, but I wanted to mention that because I see a lot of people feeling pressured that I should have a mentor, and they may not have one, but I'm glad that you did.
Yes, yes, I definitely have invested in paid mentorship as well as mentors from my natural habitat.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, that's wonderful. So tell us, how did you get started on this path of now helping people show up on Instagram?
Yeah, so I guess my origin story would start from a few years ago when I graduated from university. I immediately jumped into law school, actually, into postgraduate law school. And so basically, let's backtrack even further. So in undergrad, I was very focused on, I was your stereotypical high achieving straight A student who really prioritized my GPA. That was the main focus of my life at that point. So when I got into law school, you could imagine that I was really ecstatic and just feeling on top of the world because, wow, like my career is set. It's such a prestigious and practical career. My parents are so proud. I'm so happy. And then I went to law school and I realized I did not want to be a lawyer. And that was, I guess, that sparked a quarter life crisis for me. And, I made a difficult decision to leave law school because I knew that in my heart, I wanted to become an educator and or researcher. Whatever that looked like, because at that point I still wasn't clear on whether academia or a PhD was the right fit for me, but I knew that I wanted to teach, I wanted to share knowledge and disseminate knowledge. And I knew that from a long time ago because, for example, my very first Instagram handle was called Cheryl Theory, and I was 17, 18 at that point, and I just spontaneously made that for fun. Awesome. But I actually changed it a few times, and then now it's back to Cheryl Theory on Instagram. But at that time, I thought, one day I'll have my own theory. And that was just a joke at that point. But even from a young age, I knew I wanted to create information and share it with the world. So after leaving law school, I realized that, well, I have nothing to lose. I might as well do something that I really want to do with my life. So in terms of the career aspect of my life, I became aligned with research again, and I realized that that was a path I wanted to pursue. And I'm very excited and very confident that that's the path for me right now. And in terms of the online space, after I left law school, I realized, okay, I have some time on my hands right now. So I started looking on career websites, and I learned about this word called personal branding. And at that time, I wasn't sure what that meant. I was like, personal branding, that sounds really marketing, salesy. But then I looked deeper into it, and I realized that, it's actually about learning to differentiate yourself, learning how to position your work and what you can offer to others, and being authentic. I think that's the key word here, is that people, they look at personal branding as something that's very fluffy, promotional, salesy, but it's actually, at the core of that word, personal branding is about just being authentic in your online and offline personality or persona. So that kind of is the origin of me. So that's what sparked my online journey to start dabbling in the online marketing space, online social media space, and coaching space. And I started learning, and I started helping people for free and making sure that I could help people. And then that became a business eventually.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think personal brand, the word itself, you're absolutely right, especially if you're trying to sell it to people who are in research, in labs, in academic settings, or even in industry, are not really looking at it. They only go to their LinkedIn when they're looking for jobs, or they are like so afraid to even like anything because God forbid my employer. So I was literally like that 2 years ago. If I liked some other person's things, like what will my employer think? Like it feels like you're under the big, microscope. But the truth is that there's so much potential, and you need to showcase your work. How else would the world know what you have to offer, right?
Yeah, for sure. Your work is a big deal.
Yeah, that's your real estate. I mean, that's all you have to show for, right? So tell us a little bit about what are some misconceptions that people have, while they're using social media?
I would say that the first misconception that comes to mind is social media. The misconception is social media is not useful for anything besides sharing photos of my cat or food. Because, a few years ago, the trend on Instagram was definitely showing a highlight reel of your life. that was definitely the case a few years ago. But now, because we are so bombarded with picture perfect photos, and we are so tired of just the picture perfect life that we see from a lot of influencers, that the trend has shifted towards just being authentic, giving value, and differentiating yourself through your narrative, your story, and your personality. And I think that a lot of people assume that social media is only for vanity, and you're only trying to get likes and comments on your photos, because that's what we see. We do still see it, and we see it a lot. But there's also a growing amount of people who are using social media with more intention, in order to use it, whether to build their online presence for their career opportunities, to build an online business, to create message, to raise awareness to issues that they care about. There's so many ways that you can use social media for a greater cause than just vanity metrics. So I think that's the first misconception I can think of right now. Another thing I can think of is the misconception is that you need a lot of followers to make an impact online. But the truth is, your impact, it really, first, it depends on how you're defining your impact. But number two is realizing that as long as you're helping somebody with your content or your online presence, or you're impacting your own career and your own life, that's in itself is important enough. And I think the key thing here is just not to be so concerned with external validations and likes and comments and vanity metrics, because that won't really help your academic career or your research or your business for that matter. But rather just to focus on how can you add value to your field or your space? How can you create content or show up in a powerful way to share your message and ideas so that you can give value and contribute to your field?
That's awesome. And don't you think that with followers, I feel like if I had too many followers, I would be more conscious. So I think it's a blessing if you don't have a lot of eyes on you. But at the same time, like, what would be your advice to people who are kind of sort of stuck in this misconception of like, I need a lot of followers, I need to make any impact, so why does it even matter that I sort of show up or not? But how do you kind of help them realize what impact should they make? Like, a lot of people don't even know that, like what, don't you see a lot of stories? Like, I mean, you and I do this too, but there are so many people who constantly ask their audience, what should I post? What should I post? What should I post? What should I post? And it's like, stop asking them. That's not their job. It's your job to figure it out. Once in a while, yes, of course, you need to get some opinions and engagement. But I do see some accounts completely, drenched into, I need to find out what people are interested in. And it's like, people are interested in you. Just you, and then you show up and you learn. But what do you think people could do to kind of get that clarity as to why should I show up? Why should it even matter?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a great point. And as you mentioned, doing some, I guess, market research is important, especially when you're first starting out, just to get a feel of what your target audience wants. But it actually goes further than that. It goes before that. And when you're just starting out, it's important to think about, what do you even want to do online in the first place? And that could include, some examples could include just building your online presence to have that real estate, as you mentioned, so that when employers check you out, there's something there. You can showcase your research, showcase why you're passionate about that research. Or maybe you want to start an online business. Maybe you want to raise awareness to a cause or an issue that you're really passionate about. Whatever it is, this one comes from within.
Yes.
No matter what people say, this one does come from within. And it's important to have a clear idea of what you want to do in the first place. But then the next question is, once you figure that out, then it actually leads to questions such as, who is your target audience based on that ultimate goal? What content do you want to create based on that goal? How often will you post? What platforms do you want to post on? And how do you want to position yourself as someone who is unique and credible and relevant on that subject matter? And I think when it comes to that, as you mentioned, people want to hear from you and people want to get to know you. And that's why differentiating yourself and or your work is so important, because if you're just regurgitating what other people are saying, you're just a second copy of that person. And that will either dilute your brand or make you seem like not so credible in that subject, on that subject matter. And another thing to consider is so once you figure out what makes you different, because that in itself is a whole long exercise that you could do on your own. It's a very self-reflective exercise. But then the second thing is, how can you communicate what you're all about? to your audience. And, I think the hardest part here is even showing up to communicate your message and your story in the first place, because you feel like, who am I to even share this message or talk about this topic or create content on this? I'm not qualified enough. I don't have my PhD yet. I don't have 100 different publications. I don't have fancy research grants under my belt. There's so many doubts that we have about ourselves and our qualifications that we don't even show up in the first place. But, I think that the important thing here to remember is a question I like to ask myself is, what's the worst that can happen if I just start showing up and sharing my ideas and thoughts and perspectives?
Yeah.
And how can I do it in integrity without claiming to be someone I'm not? Because, the imposter syndrome is, we're always worried that people will think that we're a fraud and so on and so forth. But one thing to remember is, as long as you're speaking from truth and speaking from your perspective and prefacing it with, this is my opinion, and from my experience, I'm sharing this information, and I'm still a work in progress, I'm still learning, but here are what I can share right now. And as long as you're just saying things of integrity and honesty and transparency, hopefully that can alleviate some imposter syndrome. But the question that I like to ask myself is, what's the worst that can happen when I show up and share my ideas? But at the same time, what's the best that can happen?
Yeah, 100%. I think a lot of it is, as you just said, is, just showing up, and it's a lot of self-reflective work. Like, you can't be authentic if you are struggling with a lot of baggage, or you're going through, you cannot do this when you are going through a tough time of your life. Like you have to create some space. Social media is not for you to distract yourself. It's something, especially if you're building a personal brand, it's for you to grow. So you have to be in the growth season of your life, right? If you're in resting season or healing season or caring season, may not be the perfect times for you to sort of start this personal brand. May not be the best time for you to be vulnerable to all these strangers. So considering what time of your life you're in, I think is a great place to start saying, oh, let's grow. Like, now we're growing and now we want to showcase, and then slowly take those steps and slow things. I mean, if things seem slow, that's perfect, because it should be like that. You want it to be sustainable. And that brings us to the next question. Everyone asks, okay, and I hope you bust this myth for everyone. Everyone thinks that they should already know what the content they should create. They should follow all the trends that are out there, and they should batch their content like on a Sunday, like, the perfect content queen. They should have everything ready to go. Please tell us, how can people create valuable content in a sustainable manner? And a lot of this is applicable to Instagram because that's our world. But so tell us about that.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. And that was something that I definitely was worried about for a while too, because we hear people say, give value, give value, give value. So we thought, we think that we have to create a lot of content, we have to show up every single day, we have to do a lot of things to give value to our audience. Yeah. But, value can come in so many different ways. But at the same time, the obvious way, one of the more obvious ways to give value is to create educational content. And I think that's what a lot of scientists and graduate students lean towards when it comes to creating content, because it showcases their ability to communicate information. But educational content can definitely be very time consuming to create, especially when you have to break down a lot of technical information and explain complex ideas in an everyday language. So there's definitely alternate ways to create content and still give value at the same time. So, one example of that is to look in your personal life, whether it's professional or personal day-to-day life, and how can you take bits and pieces of your day-to-day and create content from it and still give value. So, for example, ultimately there's a saying that different is better than better. Mm-hmm. So how can you just be different by showing yourself, by showing your day-to-day and extracting value from those content from your day-to-day? So what I mean by that is, for example, a lot graduate students, they can definitely show the behind the scenes of doing their experiments, being in the lab. They can show the behind the scenes of writing manuscripts, obviously without disclosing any confidential information, but they can give value by showing that this is what life as a graduate student is like. And they can give value to aspiring graduate students or other graduate students who are feeling just overwhelmed in their day-to-day life and feel like there's a lack of community in their personal lives. There's value can come in so many different ways that we often just associate value with education information, which is definitely important, but we can also get value through motivation, through building a community, through resonating with each other and showing that this is what the real life, my real life is. And here's why, the picture perfect life as a scientist or a researcher, we can aspire to that, or we can just be true to ourselves and just look into our day-to-day life and realize that, our lives are awesome as well. And that our everyday life can be a source of inspiration for content as well. Because, one thing that I like to do with people or with clients and with my audience is I like to describe that you can create two types of content. You can create authority building content and you can create relationship building content. So what I mean by that is authority building content basically shows that you know what you're talking about. You're not just being fluffy. You actually know your stuff. And for relationship building content, that's content that shows that you're not just someone who talks about your subject matter, but you're also very likable as well. And both types of content are very important for your personal brand and or online business, because even if you know your subject really well, people might just see you as someone who's an expert or a credible source, but they don't find you approachable. Whereas if you're only being relatable and friendly, then people won't associate you as an authority in that subject matter or someone who's an up and coming thought leader, and etc. So that's why I believe it's important to have both types of content. And I think people dwell on the authority building content a lot more when it comes to creating content. But, it's also important to have relationship building content, such as showing the behind the scenes of your life, just saying hi, just creating relationships, and just ultimately building rapport and showing people that, hey, like I know my stuff, but I'm also a friendly person.
Yeah. And the possibilities are endless, right? When you start narrowing it down to trying to explain to people the things you're learning day to day, trying to explain your research to common public. The benefits of doing this are incredible, because while you create all this content, you are creating your TEDx talk and TED talk. You're creating your book, right? You're literally writing something that will get you to a book deal one day, that will actually get you those big grants, because one day while you're creating all this stuff, something will click somewhere and, something will resonate. You'll suddenly find your purpose, you'll be like, oh my God, like that's exactly what happened to me. And I'm sure it probably happened to you too. It's like, oh my God, this is what I'm supposed to do. Like people ask me this question after I show up on stories, and now this is what I'm supposed to do. So I think just to mention here, like on top of, yes, you have to build sustainable content, and, these are incredible tips. I didn't know the two forms of content. So, thank you for sharing that. But I kind of want to bring the audience back to the fact that this is super important. Like your personal brand is your biggest asset. The more time, energy, and effort you put into it, the more it'll return in due time. So think long term, like play the long game here. It's not just about, let me get to 1,000 and 5,000 and I don't know what to do with these followers anymore.
Yeah, I love that you brought up think long term. And actually, one thing I just wanted to quickly mention is that the two types of content I mentioned earlier, there's many different interpretations of it. So I like to look at content in that two buckets, but other people may have different categories. But I really love when you mentioned long term, because, for example, and this goes back to an earlier question about why does this even matter? Why does showing up even matter right now when I have no followers? And when you think long term, you'll realize that just by showing up on Instagram stories, for example, if you do it every single day, even with a small following, you're building up your speaking skills, you're building up your communication and confidence skills. And if you just do it consistently for a month, your confidence is going to skyrocket by the end of that month of consistent showing up on Instagram stories. And when you look at your career, you're definitely going to be doing presentations, going to conferences, networking with people. And that's when those communication skills from showing up on stories is going to come in so handy. And definitely there's so many transferable skills from social media that we don't think about.
100%. And I think especially like you and I probably don't have, a lot of us may not have English as our first language. I'm sorry if I'm assuming that English is not your first language, but I'm just, on a broader scale, there's a lot of immigrant population, people moving everywhere. It's a global world. I think it has really helped me first hone on my accent, like however I wanted it to be, and to be able to have it flow that way. And then also, like, it has really helped me improve my English, my grammar, my thoughts, like to get them together, because I only have like 4 or 8 panels to say it. It's
Yeah.
it's life changing. Like I'm telling you, even my emails at work have shrunk because now I can think small, you know. Now it just becomes, because you and I are people who show up every single day, and so we don't have time. We're running between a 9 to 5 and a business and everything that comes with it. And you know, I don't even know when I do the dishes, when I fold the clothes. I don't know when that happens. But you know, it's incredible that you say these skills are super, super transferable, especially for people who are stuck in labs for a long time, who are stuck in environments that are not very communal, or you know, that are not people facing. So I think those are great points, especially for people in science. So before I ask you the 3 big questions that I have for you, or small questions. I will ask you this though: how do you manage your time with everything?
I manage my time with my Google Calendar. Google Calendar for sure is a huge game changer for me. I also use my planner to write down my to-do list for the week. But really, I just dissect my weekly to-do list into daily tasks. And then I use my Google Calendar to really block out time to focus on a certain task. Or if I have a meeting or appointment, then I'll block it off on my Google Calendar, so I never miss an appointment. But I would say that time management really comes down to my Google Calendar and planner.
So yes, the I love that, because I feel like a lot of us don't use calendars and to-do lists and, you know, just all the tools that we have available, you know, between technology. Like I literally done everything from my phone. Like I can do everything from my phone, accept appointments, you know, delete appointments, do tasks lists. So I feel like you don't need to be like this super organized person. You just need to start somewhere, like whatever that looks like for you. And sometimes it takes a little notebook to have everything written down, right?
Yeah. And one thought just came to mind is, you know, when it comes to social media and time management for social media, I think one thing we need to remember is that it does not need to be perfect. And your Instagram stories, for example, because stories are such a powerful way to build a connection with your audience, but sometimes when we're starting out, we fall into the trap of thinking that our stories need to be perfect. We need to be in the perfect quiet location with a nice background and make it look really pretty and professional. But the thing is, if you're time, just show you on, like, just walk on the streets and record your stories. I mean, when the pandemic's over, but you know, your stories can be done in very quick ways. You don't have to be perfect in your stories. You can be literally taking a break and then just snap a 15-second story, and that's your story for today. You're showing your real life, and you're being real and showing the behind the scenes of your life, and making and creating content along the way.
Yeah, that's awesome. And again, clarifying your thoughts, everything that goes on in your head, share it with your audience. Even if it's 100 people, just share it. They're going to help you understand. They're going to give you feedback. But if you keep it in your mind and your head in a notebook, you'll never know what value it can bring. You'll never be able to improve that message. I remember some episodes I've done now were a part of like a 30-minute story that I did some long time ago. And I kept babbling and babbling and babbling and babbling. But from that point to bring it to like in a 12-minute episode, it's a process of seeing what works with people and kind of being intentional as to what content you put out there. But it all starts with showing up. Just as you said, don't be perfect. Just constantly, you have to train yourself. Again, eventually this is going to be the need of the hour. It doesn't matter what profession you're from. You will be needed to have a social media following. You will need to have some kind of authority built somewhere. And this is sort of true. Wouldn't you agree that this is sort of true for all social media platforms? You know, just to kind of bring this together is that, you know, people might say, I don't care for Instagram, because people don't see Instagram in a lot of ways from where you and I see it from, you know, which is, you know, big part of our lead generation and revenue and all those things. But then there are other platforms like LinkedIn, and there are platforms like Twitter. Of course, all of them have different protocols. You cannot do things there that you do on Instagram. But showing up in your own way within the limits of that platform is definitely a great tip for those platforms as well, right?
Yeah, for sure. And of course, if you are limited on time, I would encourage the listener not to be on every single platform or trying to be on every single platform, but each platform definitely has a unifying theme when it comes to building your brand and or online business, is definitely just showcasing you, your
Yeah.
story, your narrative, and what you can bring to the table. Ultimately, the value you bring is the key word here.
That's amazing. So remember that, sort of consistency, the value, why are you here? What's your long-term plan? Like, how will this support you? And just knowing that this is the real estate and the asset that you really have to invest in, whether it's in terms of time, whether it's in terms of, getting someone to help you build it. You just have, nowadays, even big grant organizations are looking for it. Scientists are doing so well on Twitter that you need that following, in some cases, especially if you have grants that are very, very public facing, right?
Yeah, for sure. The SciComm community is booming. It's amazing. And academic Twitter is also very big. And lots of people from all stages of their careers are on academic Twitter. It's amazing.
Yeah, Twitter made her STEM story as big as it is. It's all because of Twitter. Twitter is the first platform I tried, and we have about 7,500 followers on Twitter.
I didn't
really
realize
cool.
that.
Yeah.
I thought Instagram was your favorite platform.
Actually, it is. My favorite platform is Instagram now, but I have to give the credit to Twitter for some of my early guests and my mentors and people who've helped me in the way. And also just, kind of knowing the SciComm scene. And then I think SciComm people who couldn't handle Twitter anymore packed their bags and moved to Instagram. And I think I was a part of that migration, if you will. But tell me, which one is your favorite platform?
I will say that Instagram is my favorite because for me, I'm most comfortable and I'm most comfortable on it because the features are very easy for me to use. Stories in particular are my favorite feature on Instagram. But I would say my second favorite has to be Facebook groups because
Nice.
I know that because I used to run a Facebook group for my first business, but a Facebook group is a great way to create live trainings for your audience and just give value and create content through live streams. And it's a safe space for people, especially if it's a private community. It's a safe space for people to ask questions and interact and just become a community.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. So now tell us, what is your superpower?
My superpower would have to be I am real, that's such an interesting question, especially in the context of social media, because when we always feel like we always think of we always dwell on our shortcomings instead of thinking of what we're awesome at. And, with this conversation, I'm going to tie it back to social media and say that my superpower is that I'm really good at helping people generate content ideas, especially when they tell me their story, they tell me something that's going on in their life, and I can really relate it back to their goals online, and I can help them create either the two buckets of content again. So I can help them generate authority building content and or relationship building content from their story. So I think that that's my superpower, especially when it comes to helping people build their online presence.
That's awesome. I love that. Would you call yourself a strategic thinker, like someone who can actually connect the dots and see things a little differently?
I must say so, because I really like to think of things as a big picture and connect themes and
That's awesome.
Identify themes, whereas details are where I can sometimes overlook.
Yeah, that's awesome. So tell us, how can women and women in science and STEM and research can start believing in their brilliance on social media?
Okay, number one is just start with what you know, start where you are, start with everything you have so far, your journey up until this point, and just start putting yourself out there and sharing your journey, share your story, share why are you here online, what are you doing, what are your goals, and just start sharing from that point of view. Because as you are acquiring the relevant experiences, skills, trainings in your career, in your research, you're still learning, you're still a work in progress, but you can still share what you have gone through and what you do know, and start sharing from that point of view and let people know that you are still learning, but here's what you know and here's what you can share so far. So I think that's the first thing, is knowing that just by sharing what you do know right now, you're always a few steps ahead of someone as well. And that information that you're sharing can always help someone who are a few steps behind you. And even people who are at the same level as you, supposedly same level as you in whatever way that looks like, or people who are maybe further ahead in their careers than you, they'll still find value or interest in your content. And another thing is just to remember that the vanity metrics is not the key thing here, but rather how can you impact people? How can you just create positive space for people? How can you educate people? How can you share your knowledge and share experiences in a way that helps people or benefits people or brightens up people's day? Yeah. And value can look different, of course, for everyone, but just thinking about how can you give value and not worry so much about what people think, because when we just shift focus from, oh my gosh, what are people going to think of me, to how can I actually, create content that helps people and makes this space a better community, makes it a better, more positive space for other people. I think that's the key thing to remember. And that's one of the ways that, women in research and scientists can really step into their brilliance, as you say.
That's awesome. I love that. So tell us, what's your favorite book?
Okay, so I would say that one of my most recent favorite books is a book called Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. And the reason why I say that's my favorite book right now, it's definitely a marketing related business book, but the reason why I say that's my favorite book right now, because it's recently helped me kind of revamp how I position my business, how I revamp my messaging and positioning online, because it's actually in the book, the author outlines a 7-step framework on how you can storytell and how you can storytell your work in a way that will capture attention from your target audience and make them realize that your work is important and relevant to them. So actually, after reading that book, I redid my entire website's copywriting, and I redid my website's the words in it to fit this framework. So it was really insightful into how I can better tell a story about my business and what I'm here to do online.
That's amazing, because I have to read it, because I was going to compliment you on all your copy, and all the things that you put out there are so nice and so very well written. So it definitely shows that you put in a lot of work in it, and that speaks a lot for the book as well. And again, people need to remember that they have to tell a story every single place, like whether you're writing an email, whether you're writing a presentation, whether you are applying for a grant, whether you're applying for a job, whether you are going on a date, whether you are telling your story to your kids. Like, it doesn't matter. We're telling stories. Stories are what makes us, and we can never go, step away from them. Like, they're always going to be a part of human life. So that's awesome that you share that resource, because we are always telling stories all around the time, right?
Yeah, your story, no one can take that away from you.
Yeah.
Your story is so powerful.
Yeah. And nobody else has it, because it's always going to be yours, right?
Exactly.
So tell us, where can people find you?
All right. So you'll definitely find me on Instagram. You can find me at the handle @Cheryl Theory, CherylTheory, or you can just catch me on my website, which is CherylLau.com.
That's awesome. We'll have the links in the episode notes for everyone to connect with you. Thank you so much, Cheryl, for sharing so many great insights. This was so great.
This was so much fun, Prasha. Thank you for having me.
And that was Cheryl with amazing tips to take your personal brand to the next level. Use the links in the episode notes to follow Cheryl and her amazing work. This week, I have a wonderful surprise for you. Use the link in the episode notes and register for my free webinar that's happening on May 31st on Sunday at noon Eastern Standard Time. Sign up now. It's absolutely free, and I'll walk you through how to use your STEM superpower to conquer your career with absolute confidence. I know it's a mouthful, but it's going to be so worth it. Sign up now, because my webinars are on fire, and if you miss it, you're going to have a huge FOMO. So please sign up now. It's absolutely free. I'll see you again next week with another solo episode, and thank you so much for listening. Bye.